Howdo, my name is Andrew Hancock and I am a VMware technical architect from Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. I have worked with VMware since their birth in 1998, so that has been over 24 years I have been working with the VMware product catalogue. Some of my close colleagues say if you cut Andy in half, it reads VMware like a stick of rock from Blackpool. I have now written 134 articles and recorded 30 hours of VMware vSphere videos for Experts Exchange and received 40 Experts Exchange awards over the last 10 years working with the Experts Exchange community. I am currently the overall #1 point earner in the Hall of Fame at Experts Exchange. I am honoured to have been accepted into the VMware vExpert program since 2011 and more recently made a VMware vExpert Pro for the last 3 years. So, welcome back to another episode of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And in this video today, we're going to have a little look at VMware tools or the VMXNET3 driver and the latest versions of Windows 11 and Windows Server 2022. And you may have seen my previous video when we installed Windows Server 2022 and when I was discussing the VMXNET3 driver and the installation and the E1000 driver and the installation of VMware tools that we did, how we noticed that there does seem to appear to be a driver for VMXNET3 now baked into Windows Server 2022. Now, you also would have seen that I referred to my fellow colleague, my fellow vExpert Pro, Colin in Scotland there, that has actually written a blog about this that I'll include in the description and you can have a little look at. So let's go for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly deploy a Windows Server 2022. Again, I'm going to deploy a Windows 11 desktop again. We're going to override the template this time. We're going to select VMXNET3 for both interfaces. And then we're going to complete the installation and we'll see what happens. So without further ado, and you would have seen this in the first video I did on installing Windows 11. So I'm probably going to cut and paste this and speed it up in post so you don't have to watch it so we can get to the end result. So very, very quickly, I'm going to start with a new virtual machine. I'm going to create a new virtual machine and I'm going to call it Windows 11 test VMXNET3. I'm going to cut and paste that because I'm going to try and do these deployments simultaneously. So okay, we've got to pick our ESX002. Going to use, okay, looking at the space here on my data store, which is 86 gig. So we are probably might just play dangerously and see whether we can get away with a thin machine here. So I'm going to select Windows 11, enable Windows-based security. That's going to give me my TPM. It's actually warning me that the space capacity is greater than the amount specified on the disk. Again, I'm going to upgrade the cores. The memory is okay. I'm going to specify the ISO. There's our Windows 11 ISO. Okay, I'm going to connect that at power on. And there's one other tweak that I'm going to do. Is one of the changes I'm going to do. I'm going to specify that this is a VMXNET3 driver, followed by next, and it is actually giving me an issue because of the space. Okay, just let me pause this video and I'm going to come back and do some fettling to see that we can get this on here. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of jiggery poker in the lab here, and what I'm going to do just temporarily, and I just want to kind of show you what I'm doing. So we had about 460 gig on our data store, local data store on ESXi 002, because we've currently got our Ubuntu desktop, our Ubuntu server, our Windows 11 and our Windows Server 2022 VMs currently on there. So there is actually temporarily there's no space for another Windows 11 or Windows Server 2022 machine. So what I'm using is I'm using the migrate facility to migrate Ubuntu desktop and Ubuntu server VMs from ESXi 002 to ESXi 001. Now, this is not a vMotion as sorts, because a vMotion is the live migration of VMs, and these two machines at the moment are off. So this is just a cold migration, but it's possibly maybe a shared nothing migration, because we're actually basically moving the compute portion, the actual virtual machine, which is off, and we're moving its storage, and we're migrating that to the storage on ESXi 001 and the host ESXi 001. And you do this quite simply really by just right clicking the machine and clicking migrate, and you've got the option there to change both compute and storage, followed by next, and then select your host. Now it's actually basically just telling me at the moment that it's not compatible because the ISO is currently stored on ESXi 002 and ESXi 001 cannot access the storage, so that's why it's actually failing there, which is a good reason why, really, to be honest with you, to ensure that you have removed your ISOs from your data store. So if I just click client device there now and remove that, and if I do exactly the same with 2022, again practicing while I teach, just click client device, and if I now go back to Windows 11 and select migrate and say both compute and resources, select your host, and now the compatibility check is okay, and I can click next, select the data store, followed by next, and if I click next now, start moving it. But I don't want to move Windows 11 and Windows 2022 for the moment, just Ubuntu desktop and Ubuntu server, so that I've got enough space so that I can provision another Windows 11 server and another Windows Server 2022. So I'm going to speed that up in post, but I just wanted to let you know what I'm doing here in the lab and what you can do as well. If you've got a cluster, you've got servers, you can use the migrate function. It's not a vMotion or a storage vMotion. It's a cold migration. So anyway, so I'm going to be back shortly. So just to recap there, I've created a Windows 11 virtual machine, and you may have noticed that this time I've actually deliberately specified a VMXNET3 interface. Already has the TPM device, set to 4 cores, 8 gig of memory, 96 gig hard disk. I've created a thin disk, thin provisioned, so that it's the size of the disk written to the disk is going to slowly expand with the data that's written into the disk. It's not going to, the 96 gig is not going to create a 96 gig disk on that data store the moment we power it up. I've done exactly the same thing with Windows Server 2022. So again, 4 cores, 8 gig of memory, 90 gig disk, and I've selected a VMXNET3 because the template by default uses the E1000E. I'm going to collect the data store ISO, So that's the ISO ready to boot from, and connect at power on, followed by OK. And I'm just going to check that we're ready to go. Data so ISO, connect at power on. So we're ready to power them up. I'm just actually waiting for these to be migrated completely off the data store, so I've actually got the space to be able to power one on. And in fact, that actually looks like that's going to start to happen now with Ubuntu server. Now, sometimes the space allocation is not reflected automatically. Sometimes you may need to wait and do a refresh. 98. And we'll have a little look at the data store. So that relocation has completed. So let's browse the files, and we can see that we have no folder for Ubuntu server anymore. It's gone. And the summary, if we do a refresh, is saying we've got 380 gig used on a 465.5 gig allocated at the moment. Okay, so without further ado, let's power on and let's get this installation going. And again, we've got to hit enter, remember to boot from the CD. So that's actually starting to boot. And you've seen these installations previously in the previous videos. I did a Windows 11 and Windows 2022. So I'm not going to go through the full installation and capture that for you and speed it up in post. I just really actually want to get to the end operating system, and we'll see what actually happens when we finish the installation. Have we got networking or not? But whilst I'm still waiting, you would have seen this before. So I'm just going to select United Kingdom, followed by next, followed by install. 81%. Again, I don't have a product key, but again, this time I'll choose something different. I'll say we'll do Windows 11 education this time round. Yes, accept the license agreement, and we'll do next. It's going to go off and start doing that. We're at 86% here. Am I feeling lucky today? Okay, let's just see really what happens. This just may all end really badly with resources on this particular host. We will see. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to start booting from that one. This is our Windows Server 2022. Just sort of kind of hoping that the Ubuntu desktop gets moved off quickly. So similar interface, similar installer. Next, install now. Our Windows 11 one is chopping away. What I would actually start to see is a constraint for memory and a constraint for CPU, and everything's going to start going really, really, really slowly, and then we're probably going to start getting error messages. So I don't have a product key, so okay, so let's just turn around and go that we're going to use the data center desktop experience GUI, and we're going to click next. I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing next, and it's going to chug on installing our Microsoft Server operating system. That's installing Windows. Note the difference really, that one is installing Windows and one is installing a Microsoft Server operating system. I don't know why they've missed out the installing, I don't know if it's installing Windows desktop or installing a Windows operating system, and here it's a Microsoft Server operating system. Okay, so we're at 87%, but of course now, you know, we're going to start seeing some real performance. You know, everything's writing to the data store now. So, you know, the read and the writes are going to be up, whilst it's also basically migrating the Ubuntu desktop VMDKs across the wire, across 1 gig, basically reading and writing them, or writing them specifically to ESXi001. So things may all start to be a little bit, things may look a little bit slower than previously. So we're at 91% here, we're at 2% here. And when we've actually finished there, okay, so I'm going to speed all this up in post, and we'll come back and we'll have a little look at desktops, and we'll have a little look to actually really see. We'll have a little look to see what VMware Tools says here for Server 2022 and Windows 11 here, and whether or not that we do get any networking. Say these are using the original ISOs from Microsoft, the baked-in ISOs. So it'll be interesting to see what our results are. So I'll be back shortly. So I'm back, and I will speed all that up in post. But if we have a little look at our Windows Server 2022, we've selected the VMXNET3 interface as part of the initial hardware configuration in the template. We've not installed VMware Tools. If we have a little look at the summary for our Windows 2022 machine, you can clearly see there that VMware Tools not running, not installed. However, it is fairly obvious and clear that we have networking. We can ping Google's DNS server. We've got network icon here, and we can actually basically download updates as well. So kudos to Colin there and his article that I will put in the bottom here. You can also just quickly see there as well, actually, as I was saying to you before about the updates being included by Microsoft in their Windows update. In fact, it's just actually pulling that down as well, and it's pending install as well. So Windows Server 2022, go for it. When you're deploying, when you're wanting to install for the very first time, stop, halt, don't just go with the template options of E1000E. You can select VMXNET3, and you'll get networking as part of the installation. But please don't think that you don't need to install VMware tools. Please do install VMware tools as well. However, different kettle of fish, as they say, with our Windows 11 machine. It's clearly not liking the fact that we've got no network interface, and comes up with an exclamation mark next to an ice cream, which, yeah, I don't know where they got that clip art from. It looks absolutely poor. Anyway, something went wrong. Doesn't even tell you what went wrong. It could actually really say no networking or no Wi-Fi or something. And even if I do skip, which I think I did before, I think it still tries to go off and basically turns around and says OOB region, which is out of the box region check. It's obviously trying to do. It's obviously trying to check where it thinks we are in the world to set time, possibly. I don't know why it's even trying to check updates if it's got no support, possibly, in the operating system. We'll see whether or not it fails again. We'll see whether or not that we can actually get to a desktop to prove that we've got networking or no networking. So our Windows 2022 server, go ahead, select VMXNET3 on installation. No longer is there a dependency on the VMware tools being installed for that particular driver. However, please do install VMware tools for the other functionality. And it's actually basically downloaded a much later version of VMware tools driver. And if we just sort of kind of very, very quickly look at network adapters, and we look at the driver that's actually telling us that it is from Microsoft. The driver date is the 7th of October 2019, if I'm reading it right, or is it the 10th of July 2019? 18170, which is exactly what Colin suggested in his article, that it came packaged with 1817.0. This article, I think, is not, well, it's this year. There we go, March 16th, 2022. So the VMXNET3 1950 is available and the update, and it looks like now that it's going to install 1990. So we're almost version 2 of the installation. After that's installed, and we'll restart this, I might just actually have a little look what Colin was referring to, and he was saying that he was applying a VMware tools, and then he applied update, and then installed VMware tools, so it really updated with it, and it still had that driver. So that's interesting. It'd be interesting to see whether or not that driver that's currently being pulled down by Windows Update is more current than what is in ESXi8. Okay, so it's okay. So let's just carry on with sign-in options, because if we've got no networking anyway, then we can't do. So my name is Andrew Hancock. I'll speed all this up in post because you've seen all this before. First pet's name, Squeak. And first name of your oldest cousin, Bob. All right there, Bob. And first, my nickname in school was Mr. VSAN. Followed by next. So of course, we haven't got VMware tools installed in this, so we can't see an IP address reflected here yet anyway. But the OOB region, so we'll just say yes, accept, yes, accept, included, 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 included. I don't even understand why it would offer us a Windows Live login if we can't actually reach the internet because we've got no networking. Okay, so yeah, that clearly actually suggests here that we've got networking because it's trying to join. So it has actually installed that that driver now. So if we have a little look here and we look at the driver version, then yeah, okay, so 6 of the 6 2022 1990 is the version from it does actually say that the driver is provided by VMware. So VMware have provided the driver to Microsoft for Microsoft to download in Windows Update. So let's install VMware tools and see whether or not that VMware tools let's install VMware tools in this and see whether or not that the version that comes with install VMware tools, because remember, of course, ESXi 8 IA was launched on the 11th of October 2022. So it'll be interesting to see where the version of VMware tools in ESXi 8 is later than what is in that Windows update. However, of course, it is possible that they have seen an issue in the VMware tools that's packaged with ESXi 8 and it's been subsequently updated by a version via Windows Update, if you follow that. So it's just going to stop pinging for the moment, and we've got our run our VMware tool setup, which we've done previously, and I say we'll speed some of this up in post. Windows 11 taking a few minutes, so and this is probably going to want to do a restart. And installation is in progress, not installed. Installing video driver. That flicker flash then was a video driver being installed, replaced. Okay, so it's wanting to do a restart. So we're going to do finish and we're going to say yes, we're going to do that restart. I'm going to have a little look at the device driver in a minute. And this is taking a few minutes. We've seen this before. And that's actually basically, so I'm going to basically just disappear because this is going to do some updates. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so interestingly, Windows 11 also has VMXNET3 driver included in the burnt into the original ISO. I've not added this, and clearly there's our VMXNET3 Ethernet adapter, version 1.8.17.0. So why we actually basically got that OOB region issue initially, I don't know. Possibly at that point in time the driver wasn't installed and it couldn't work out the region, or it could have been just maybe just a fluke of one of those. But clearly we've obviously got networking. I've not added VMware tools yet. I've not installed VMware tools yet, and there we go, we've got network interface running in the OS. So again, if you're installing Windows 11, then you can use VMXNET3 interface from the get-go. Windows 22 server is still doing Windows updates. So I think we'll do the same thing here. We'll just basically give this a Windows update, and we'll have a little look. So we'll basically update all these as well, and we'll see whether or not that it's going to pull down an update for this particular driver. I did actually have a little look around, and the version of VMware tools is currently in ESXi 8 is 12.0.6, and if you actually look on the packages available, the latest is 12.1.5. So there have been some releases of VMware tools, so 12.0.6. So there's been two releases, 12.1 and 12.1.5, that have appeared since the release of ESXi 8. Okay, so I'll speed all this up in post, and we'll just wait for this to do its thing, and then I'll come back. Well, I said I'd be back, but I didn't think that it was going to be 24 hours later. I seriously think that the issue that we're actually seeing on one of these ProLiant Gen 8s is a broadcast storm against the data store. So I think that both Windows 11 and Windows Server 2022 are both fighting for resources on the data store. So we left these 24 hours ago. Windows Server 2022 doing Windows updates, and the same with Windows 11 doing Windows updates. And I left them overnight and came back this afternoon to have a little look at them. So our Windows Server 2022, just as a reminder, is fully patched and up to date. And you may remember that we installed Windows Server 2022 on our ESXi host, and we selected VMXNET3 as the interface. And surprisingly, as confirmed by Colin Westwater in his article, the VMXNET3 driver is now baked into the ISO. Despite the guest operating system selection template still actually by default actually specifying the E1000E interface, clearly there is no need anymore with Windows Server 2022 to use the E1000E interface for installations. You can use VMXNET3 driver from the get-go, and then there is no requirement for you to install VMware tools. However, as I said, VMware tools is not optional and should always be installed on your production servers. But the networking driver is now baked into the original ISO. And of course, that was version, if we look at Colin's article again, version 1.817.0. And I had some questions as to, as the updates were coming down from Microsoft, the latest version was 1990, dated 6 of the 6th, 2022. So also noted looking at the tools that are installed by ESXi 8 are 12.0.6, and there are 2 versions of tools since that was published. ESXi 8 was released on 11th of October, so in the last couple of months another 2 versions of it have been released. So I thought, for the hell of it, that we would install, and you can actually see there, that's just because I've just clicked out actually, and that resizing of the screen there is actually done by VMware Tools. So if you don't have VMware Tools installed, then you won't get that auto resizing. So I've downloaded the latest version of VMware Tools from the packages.vmware.com/tools. So I should have a download here, and here you can find the ISO and you can find the EXE. So I'm just going to open up the ISO using Explorer. Open, and I'm going to do an in-place upgrade. So I'm going to do setup, because I'm curious to see if this driver here, the VMXNET3 driver, changes. And as I mentioned to you as well, that this was downloaded by Windows Update. The driver is provided by VMware, so therefore VMware must be actually in communication with Microsoft to provide the driver to them. So I'm interested to see whether or not that in this latest 12.1.5 of VMware Tools, does the VMXNet driver get changed, get updated? Does the driver version change? Does the driver date change? So here you go. This is the VMware Tools that are installing 12.1.5, and I'm going to click next. I'm going to do a typical installation, which, as I was sort of kind of saying in a previous video about installing VMware Tools, which is just a software application, and the security of VMware Tools can obviously affect the security of your entire virtual machine. And products like Ivanti, Patch Manager, Security Controls, or Endpoint Manager, they have the functionality to be able to download patches, download VMware Tools, and also patch your operating systems, as well as patching any of the security and critical updates that are available from Microsoft. So you can see that refresh then, and there's lots of refreshes going on here within the device manager as drivers are updated. So I'm going to click finish. It's not going to ask me for a restart. You can see that we've got the VMware Tools down here, 12.1.5 services running. So have we got a new version of the VMXNET3 driver? And we have. Just sort of kind of really goes to prove a point that if you are following frameworks like Cybersecurity Essentials, if you are following frameworks like Cyber Security Essentials, Cyber Insurance, and you've got requirements to look at the security of your environment, and you've got procedures in place to patch various software applications and drivers, etc., that have various CVEs above 7, then you need to keep an eye on your VMware Tools as well. So there we go, 1.9.11.0 as 12.1.5. So that's our Windows 2000, our Windows Server 2022 server, all nicely patched. So I'm just going to discard that, or I'm just going to shut that down, because we will use that in the lab again. So moving on, and let's have a little look at our Windows 11 desktop VM. So let's have a little look at our Windows 11 test VMXNET3 virtual machine. Again, this took an age to update overnight, but anyway, we've got all the latest updates. And I did notice, just like our Windows Server 2022 server, it also pulled down a VMXNET3 driver, which also happens to be 1990 as well. So one of the other things I'm going to do, I've already downloaded the 12.1.5 VMware tools directly from the packages.vmware.com website, and I've got that here on the disk, and I've already started it, but this time I'm actually going to run the exe. I have downloaded the ISO, but I'm actually just going to run the exe as well. So 12.1.5 installation, and I'm going to click next, and I'm going to click typical, and I'm going to say install. And I would expect to see that this is probably going to update the Windows 11 driver to exactly the same version that we saw in Windows Server 2022. So I think that concludes that you can now select the VMXNET3 network interface as a network interface in the guest customization selection settings when you're actually installing your virtual machines for Windows Server 2022 and Windows 11. So there's no excuses anymore to have that E1000E driver knocking around in your virtual machine in production. You're still going to need to install VMware tools, which is recommended to give a better user experience of using Windows operating systems under VMware vSphere, because the keyboard driver and the mouse driver and the memory driver. So it doesn't really stop you from ignoring and not installing or believing that VMware tools is optional, but it does mean to say that you can now use, just like Linux, eventually Windows has caught up with Linux, that you can use the VMXNET3 driver. So next time you're installing Windows 11 or Windows Server 2022, then try it for yourself. Select VMXNET3 instead of the E1000 driver and continue your installation. So that's really all I've actually got to say about the VMXNET3 driver in this particular video. It has been a long video, what we've been looking at installing Windows Server 2022 using that particular network interface and Windows 11. We did a bit of migration to start with that I included for you, so that we could migrate off some virtual machines off a data store so we could use the space to do this test. This is just validating the install. I'm not quite sure that it has updated this driver yet. I don't know how far it got. No, so this is just, they say, you know, this machine, the performance of this machine just seems to be incredibly slow, but we'll just wait for this to finish doing the installation of VMware tools, which is 12.1.5, which does include a later version of the VMXNET3 driver, and I'll show you that, and we will say good night, because this particular video has taken an awful long time to complete, and I do seriously probably need to have a little look at these particular servers in the lab. I was hoping that the SSD RAID arrays were actually faster than network storage. Could possibly be Windows 11 is just requiring a lot more resources than I've given it. So that's starting the services, it's installing the drivers, it's just installing the latest driver there now. I was going to say that I'll speed this up in post, but I'm sure that if you're watching this and if you've got to 40 minutes in, then you can basically just stop and say thank you very much. So videos in the future, if you want to see a particular topic that's covered, then please drop a note in the comments and we'll see what we can do. I'm going to think about the next tranche of videos that we do. There's a lot still sort of kind of left. You know, I've spoken about virtual switches and VLANs and teaming and load balancing. There's also DRS, there's also HA, which has a requirement upon shared storage. Lots of different avenues that we can go and we can discuss. And I've also basically turned around and spoken about templates as well. So I have a little think about what videos we're going to start doing next. So I'm going to do finish. Again, it's not asking me to do a restart there like it has previously. That's a question that has come up on Experts Exchange occasionally, where people need to update VMware tools and ask the question, is it going to require a restart? Obviously, if you're updating things like network driver, there are going to be moments when that network interface driver is being replaced that there's going to be a moment of outage for several seconds. But sometimes if a component's in use that cannot be updated, then it does actually require a restart. So if we have a little look at driver, and we can see it's exactly the same driver that's used, 1911.0. Interestingly, it was released on the 14th of September 2022, which was a couple of weeks, 3 weeks before the launch of ESXi8, which basically was on the 11th of October. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this particular video. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss VMXNET3, and who really kind of thought that you could talk for 40 minutes about a network interface driver. But it is important. Please don't use the E1000 driver or the E1000E driver anymore. Use the VMXNET3 driver. So again, thank you very much for watching. Come back soon for another edition of Hancock's VMware Half Hour, when we can maybe look at templates. So thank you very much and good night.